Corvus, the alien statesman, blubbered tears of joy uncontrollably, face in hands, shocked that Jeffrey Mitchell, the human, would save his life against all odds, and for seemingly no reason. Corvus had just been brutally assaulted, his aged reptilian body kicked and pummeled by a group of vicious Malon youth gang members in a shadowy alley of the Zephyr capital city. They had demanded his money. When he refused, they attacked with fists and clawed feet. Just as Corvus thought all hope was lost, Mitchell appeared out of nowhere, fighting off the much stronger assailants with astonishing ferocity and selflessness, breaking his own arm in the desperate brawl. Mitchell's intervention allowed Corvus to escape, which would prove pivotal in an unexpected way. As an influential elder statesman, Corvus had been a key voice in opposing the proposed trade deal with Earth. He viewed it as far too favorable to the humans, but after Mitchell's heroic, puzzling actions, Corvus had a change of heart. Maybe humans deserved a fair deal after all. Using his vast political sway, Corvus pushed the agreement through, securing lucrative terms for Earth. For Mitchell, it seemed to be mission accomplished, a resounding diplomatic victory. He thought he would return home a hero. But Mitchell failed to realize that charity and intervening to help others was a grievous cultural taboo on Zephyr. No good deed goes unpunished, as the humans would soon learn. In a shock move, Malon security forces arrested Mitchell and dragged him to a stark subterranean prison. The human delegation was given a choice: give up the favorable trade terms Corvus had gifted them, or see Mitchell rot in an alien dungeon, likely facing execution for his crime. The clock was ticking for the humans to find a way out of this mess. The future of Earth's economy and Mitchell's life hung in the balance. Mitchell sat on the cold metal bench of his alien cell, head in his hands, as the full implications of his well-intentioned actions sank in. The heavy clang of the cell door opening jolted him to attention. In walked Corvus, his reptilian features unreadable. "I don't understand," Mitchell said. "I was just trying to help. Where I'm from, that's what you do when someone's in trouble." Corvus shook his head. "Your ways are not our ways, human. In Malon society, charity is the deepest of shames. It says the recipient is too weak to survive alone. You didn't save me. You humiliated me." Mitchell's heart sank. "The trade deal, that was your way of repaying the debt." "It was, but your display was public, many saw. Now we are both disgraced beyond repair." "I'm sorry, I didn't know. Let me talk to them, explain it was a misunderstanding." "It's too late for that," Corvus said grimly. "The only path now is the arena. You will fight, you will die. Then perhaps honor can be restored." The guards came for Mitchell, dragging him from the cell to a crudely hewn stone arena. A roaring crowd of Malon spectators jeered as he was shoved into the center. Cameras hovered, broadcasting his face planet-wide. A hulking Malon, covered in ritual scars, emerged from the opposite gate. The crowd chanted his name, Kazatar Kaztar, a murderer sentenced to death for his crimes. The fight was brutal. Kazatar was strong, fast, vicious, but Mitchell was determined. He fought with a desperate tenacity, landing blows that would have killed a human. As they grappled, he spotted a weakness, an old wound. Exploiting it, Mitchell brought Kaztar crashing down, his throat exposed. The crowd waited, hungry for the killing blow, but it never came. Mitchell released his foe, staggering back. Kaztar looked up at him, shock in his eyes. The audience fell silent, then erupted in furious whispers. In the days that followed, Mitchell faced opponent after opponent. Each time he triumphed. Each time he spared their lives. And each time the disbelieving crowds grew more agitated. Late one night, a shadow slipped into his cell. It was Kaztar. "Why?" the Malone rasped. "Why did you spare me?" Mitchell shrugged. "It's what humans do. We believe in mercy and second chances." Kaztar shook his head wonderingly. "You shame me, human, but you also grant me life. This I will not forget." He was not the last. More defeated foes came, each expressing the same confused gratitude. They lived, but bore the stain of dishonor. Alone in his cell, Mitchell grappled with the implications. Was mercy right if it clashed with an entire society's values? Were human beliefs so superior? He had no answers. But beyond the prison walls, his actions had sparked something. The Malon public was transfixed by this alien warrior who refused to abide by their ancient codes. The media buzzed with outrage at the human who dared to sully their traditions. In the heart of the Malon Authority, a decision was made. This human, this Mitchell, could not be allowed to continue. He was too dangerous. An example had to be made. A week into his brutal captivity, Mitchell awoke to find a hooded figure sitting quietly in his cell. He jolted upright, fists clenched, ready for a fight. But the figure raised its hands in a placating gesture and pulled back its hood, revealing the aged features of Corvus. "What are you doing here?" Mitchell hissed, glancing furtively at the cell door. Corvus held a finger to his lips. "I had to see you, human. Your actions in the arena, they have affected me deeply. Your mercy, your compassion, even for those who would kill you, it has made me question everything I thought I knew about our way of life." Mitchell sat back, surprised. I'm just doing what I believe is right." Corvus nodded solemnly. "And that is why I must tell you the truth. The Malon homeworld is dying, Mitchell. Our reckless exploitation has drained it dry. It will be uninhabitable within a generation." Mitchell's eyes widened in shock. "What? But surely your government is working to save it?" Corvus laughed bitterly. "The government? No, they are too busy conquering new worlds to plunder. That is the Malon way. Consume and move on. Only the elite few know the truth." He leaned forward, his eyes intense. "But you, Mitchell, you could change that. Your example could teach the Malon a new path, one of cooperation and compassion. I beg of you, help me expose the truth. Guide my people to a better way, before it's too late." Mitchell sat in stunned silence, the weight of Corvus's words sinking in. Could he really make a difference? Did he even have the right to try and change an entire society's beliefs? He thought of the countless Malon lives he had spared in the arena, lives that in the eyes of their culture were now worthless. But to Mitchell, every life had value. Every life deserved a chance. He met Corvus's pleading gaze and nodded firmly. "I'll do it. I'll help you, Corvus, whatever it takes." The elder statesman sagged with relief. "Thank you, Mitchell, thank you." Days turned into weeks as Mitchell continued to fight and survive in the arena. His captors, desperate to see him fall, began importing ever more fearsome alien creatures to pit against him. For his final match, they unleashed a nightmarish beast, a monstrous amalgamation of teeth and claws and fury. It was a creature bred solely for the kill, and the Malon Emperor himself had come to witness Mitchell's demise. The battle was brutal. Mitchell fought with every ounce of strength and skill he possessed, but the creature was relentless. Claws raked his flesh, teeth snapped at his throat. He could feel his body weakening, his blood pooling on the sandy floor. But still, he fought on, for the sake of the Malon, for the sake of a dying world that deserved a chance at redemption. In a final desperate lunge, Mitchell drove his blade deep into the creature's chest. It let out an ear-shattering shriek and collapsed, twitching to the ground. The arena fell silent. Mitchell, his body broken and bleeding, staggered to his feet. The Emperor leaned forward in his seat, eager to witness the killing blow. But it never came. Instead, Mitchell threw down his weapon. He turned to face the Emperor and, in a voice raw with pain and conviction, declared, "I will not kill for your entertainment any longer." The crowd erupted in shocked whispers. The Emperor's face contorted with rage. He gestured sharply to his guards, who began to advance on Mitchell with weapons drawn. Mitchell closed his eyes, preparing for the end, but it never came. Instead, the arena doors burst open and Corvus strode in, flanked by the very prisoners Mitchell had spared. They had come, inspired by his example, to take a stand. Corvus marched up to the Emperor's box, his voice amplified by the arena's speakers. "People of Malon, hear the truth. Our world is dying, and our leaders have done nothing to save it." The Emperor leapt to his feet, shouting for his guards to seize Corvus, but the old statesman would not be silenced. "We must change," he cried. "We must learn from the humans, from their compassion and cooperation. Only then can we hope to survive." The broadcast cut off abruptly as chaos erupted in the arena. In the streets of Malon cities, the rioting began as the shocking truth spread like wildfire. The arena erupted into pandemonium as Corvus's shocking revelations reverberated through the crowd. Mitchell, bleeding and exhausted, staggered to his feet amidst the chaos. Corvus grasped his arm, shouting over the din, "We must go, now!" Together they raced through the seething mass of confused and angry Malon, the prisoners Mitchell had spared, forming a protective cordon around them. Laser blasts sizzled overhead as the Emperor's guards tried to restore order, but the crowd's fury had been unleashed. They surged forward, overwhelming the guards through sheer numbers. Mitchell, Corvus, and their impromptu band of allies burst out of the arena into the neon-lit streets of the capital. Sirens wailed in the distance as the authorities scrambled to respond to the spreading unrest. "This way," Corvus urged, leading them down a maze of back alleys. They took shelter in a decrepit warehouse on the city's outskirts, catching their breath amidst the rusted machinery. Mitchell slumped against a wall, his wounds throbbing. Corvus knelt beside him, concern etched on his aged features. "Are you hurt?" the elder said, examining a deep gash on Mitchell's arm. Mitchell waved him off. "I'll live. We need to focus on what comes next." Over the following days, as the Malon government cracked down mercilessly on the protests, Mitchell and Corvus began to plan. They reached out to Corvus's network of dissident contacts, forming the nucleus of a resistance movement. From their hidden base, they launched a clandestine campaign to rally the populace. Mitchell, his arena exploits having made him a folk hero, recorded impassioned video messages urging the Malon to rise up against the corrupt leadership that had led their world to ruin. These videos, along with evidence of the government's deceptions that Corvus had gathered, were broadcast on pirate frequencies, spreading like wildfire despite the authorities' efforts to jam them. Support for the rebellion swelled as more and more Malon, inspired by Mitchell's example, and outraged by their leader's betrayal, flocked to join. One night, as Mitchell pored over a map of the capital with Corvus and a handful of other rebel leaders, an urgent message came through. Their hidden base had been discovered. A Malon military force was on its way to crush them. Mitchell's jaw tightened as he scanned the assembled rebels, seeing the fear and determination warring in their eyes. "We have to hold them off," he said firmly. "We can't let this end here." As the first Malon troops breached the perimeter, Mitchell led a ferocious defense, rallying the rebels with his tireless resolve. They fought with the desperate strength of those who had nothing left to lose, but the government forces were relentless. Room by room, the rebels were pushed back, leaving a trail of their dead and wounded. Mitchell and Corvus found themselves cornered in the central command center, a dwindling band of fighters at their side as the Malon closed in. Mitchell gripped his rifle, preparing for a final stand. Corvus laid a hand on his shoulder. "It has been an honor, my friend," the elder said solemnly. Just then a deafening roar shook the building. Mitchell's eyes widened as he recognized the sound of human engines. He ran to a shattered window and stared up into the sky. There, descending through the clouds like avenging angels, was a massive fleet of Earth warships. His distress beacon, activated in a last desperate gamble, had been heard. The human ships tore into the Malon forces with devastating precision, their superior technology overwhelming the planetary defenses in a matter of minutes. The Emperor, faced with annihilation, had no choice but to agree to talks. In the negotiations that followed, Mitchell found himself the reluctant architect of the Malon's future. He dictated terms from a position of unassailable strength, backed by the might of the human fleet. The Malon government would step down immediately. Free elections would be held, with Corvus appointed interim leader to oversee the transition, and the Malon would accept a mission of human experts to aid in the desperate fight to save their dying world. The Emperor signed the accord with ill-concealed fury, but he was powerless to resist. As Mitchell watched Corvus being sworn in as transitional leader on the steps of the Malon capital, he felt a deep sense of satisfaction. The Malon had been set on a new path, one of hope and renewal. But his work was not yet done. As he prepared to return to Earth, Corvus pulled him aside. "Stay with us," the new leader urged. "Guide us through this change. The Malon need you, Mitchell. I need you." Mitchell hesitated, torn. Earth was his home, but he could not deny the bond he had forged with Corvus and the Malon people through their shared struggle. He thought of all the suffering he had witnessed, the lives lost and the scars left behind. Could he really turn his back on them now when they needed him most? Mitchell stood before Corvus, his heart heavy with the weight of his decision. The elder's plea echoed in his mind, a call to a higher purpose he could not ignore. He had come to this alien world as a stranger, but now its fate was inextricably intertwined with his own. "I'll stay," Mitchell said, his voice steady with resolve. "I'll help you rebuild, Corvus. We'll show your people a better way." The old Malon clasped his hand, gratitude shining in his eyes. "Thank you, my friend. With you by our side, I believe we can succeed." In the weeks that followed, human aid ships poured into Malon space, bringing with them the resources and expertise needed to begin the monumental task of revitalizing a dying world. Mitchell worked tirelessly alongside Corvus and the human teams, serving as a vital link between the two cultures. But progress was slow, and tensions simmered beneath the surface. Many Malon, especially those who had once held power, bristled at the changes sweeping their society. They saw the acceptance of human help as a humiliating admission of weakness, a betrayal of the Malon way. Whispers of dissent soon turned to open hostility. Xenophobic terrorist cells began to emerge, striking out against the human presence with savage fury. Aid workers were ambushed, supply convoys bombed. The fragile peace Mitchell and Corvus had worked so hard to build teetered on the brink of collapse. One night, as Mitchell pored over security reports in his makeshift office, Corvus burst in, his face ashen. "There's been another attack," he said grimly. "A human medical facility on the outskirts of the capital. Dozens dead." Mitchell slammed his fist on the desk, his frustration boiling over. "We have to stop this, Corvus. We can't let a handful of extremists derail everything we've accomplished." "I agree," Corvus said, "but we must tread carefully. Many of our people are still unsure about this new path. If we crack down too hard, we risk turning more of them against us." For months they walked a perilous tightrope, working to root out the terrorists while striving to win the hearts and minds of the Malon populace. Mitchell threw himself into the fight, leading daring raids against terrorist strongholds and delivering impassioned speeches urging unity and cooperation. But the cost was high. Good people, human and Malon alike, fell to the terrorists' bombs and blades. Each loss weighed heavily on Mitchell, a reminder of the price of his commitment to this alien world. The darkest blow came on a quiet morning, as Mitchell and Corvus were preparing for a key summit with Malon leaders. The explosion ripped through the government complex with shattering force, sending Mitchell tumbling to the ground in a hail of debris. Ears ringing, he staggered to his feet, coughing on the thick smoke billowing through the corridors. "Corvus!" he shouted, panic gripping his heart. "Corvus, where are you?" He found his friend in the wreckage of the council chamber, his broken body cradled in the rubble. Mitchell knelt beside him, desperately searching for a pulse, but it was too late. Corvus was gone, another victim of the hatred that threatened to tear the Malon apart. In the dark days that followed, Mitchell nearly buckled under the weight of his grief and the crushing burden of leadership that now fell solely on his shoulders. But he knew he could not falter. Corvus's dream, the dream of a Malon society built on compassion and unity, had to endure. He owed his friend that much. With grim determination, Mitchell rallied the Malon government and redoubled his efforts to stamp out the terrorist threat. He worked harder than ever to spread the message of cooperation, to show the Malon that there was strength in unity, not just the selfish pursuit of individual gain. Slowly, year by painful year, the tide began to turn. The terrorists' support dwindled as more and more Malon came to embrace the vision of a better future that Mitchell and Corvus had fought for. The attacks grew less frequent, then finally ceased altogether. Under Mitchell's guidance, Malon society began to heal. Human technology and knowledge freely shared helped to repair the damaged ecosystems and build a sustainable economy. New leaders arose, committed to the ideals of compassion and cooperation that Mitchell had championed. As Mitchell watched this transformation take hold, he felt a sense of bittersweet pride. They had done it. Against all odds, they had set the Malon on a new course, but the cost had been so high. Corvus and so many others had given their lives for this dream. And Mitchell himself had given everything. The years of struggle and loss had left him a shell of the man he had once been, his once black hair now grey, his face lined with the weight of too many burdens borne for too long. He knew deep in his bones that it was time for him to step aside. The Malon had found their own strength, their own way forward. They didn't need him anymore. On a clear morning, Mitchell stood before a vast crowd of Malon, his heart heavy as he delivered his final address. "My friends," he said, his voice cracking with emotion, "you have come so far. You have proven that compassion is not weakness, that unity is strength. You have shown the galaxy what the Malon can be." He paused, blinking back tears. "But now it is time for me to go. You must find your own path, build your own future. Remember all that we have learned, all that we have sacrificed. Remember Corvus and the dream he died for. Carry that dream forward and let it guide you always." With those words, Mitchell turned and boarded the waiting Earth ship, his steps heavy with exhaustion and grief. As the ship lifted into the sky, he looked down at the crowds below, their arms raised in a final salute, their faces wet with tears of gratitude and sorrow. In that moment, the weight of all he had endured crashed down upon him. He sank to his knees, his body shaking with sobs, as the realization of all he had lost washed over him. He had given everything to save this world, to guide its people to a better future. But in doing so, he had sacrificed a part of himself he could never reclaim. As the ship pierced the clouds, carrying him away from the world that had become his home, Mitchell stared out at the stars, his heart torn between pride and pain. He had made a difference. He had kept his promise to Corvus. But as he faced the long journey back to an Earth he barely recognized, he couldn't help but wonder if the price had been too high. The scars he carried, the empty space in his heart where Corvus and so many others had once been, these were the burdens he would bear for the rest of his days. The weight of a galaxy's salvation, bought with the coin of his own loss. Mitchell closed his eyes, the stars blurring through his tears. He would go on. He would find a way to carry this weight. For the sake of all those who had fallen, for the sake of the future they had won, he would endure. But he knew with a certainty that ached in his very bones that a part of him would forever remain here, among the gleaming towers of the Malon capital and the alien stars he had come to know as home. A part of his heart, broken and burdened, would always belong to this world he had saved, and to the memory of those he could not. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.